Hello and welcome to the 741 channel. Thanks for stopping by. Today's project is going to be to replace this 2-meter mobile antenna on my 2012 Toyota Corolla. This particular antenna is actually a 2-meter and 440 dual band antenna. This is something I bought a couple of years ago, and I had the intention of putting a dual band radio in here, but I've since decided that I have no use for 440 and I don't plan on using it at all. The other reason I want to replace this antenna is that I've never been able to get it to really tune properly on 2 meters. It works fine for receiving, but lately I've been doing a little bit more transmitting on 2 meters, so I'm going to replace this antenna with something that tunes up a little bit better and will be a little bit more favorable to my radio. Here's a closer look at the antenna. You can see I've just got it on a mag mount going to the trunk there. I would like to drill a hole and permanently mount it here at some point, but the structure of the trunk is a little bit tricky. There's kind of a strengthening rib in there, and I've got to figure out how to get around that with a regular NMO mount before I do any permanent mounting on this car. I could put something up there on the roof too, I suppose, but for right now the mag mount seems to work just fine for me. Anyway, the antenna in question, I think it's an SBB2 or something like that. You can see it's got sort of a bottom loaded coil, and then it's got this little center section, and it's, I don't know if it's 19 or 20 inches long or so. You know, it's not bad for highway speeds. It's pretty stiff. It rides okay, but like I said, it never really tuned up quite right. But before I replace it, I'm going to put an analyzer on it and just see what the analyzer shows. So as you can see here, I've got my MFJ 259C antenna analyzer set up, and I'm running this on external power. You can see that here. I don't have any batteries in it, but anyway, I've got it tuned to the 2-meter portion of the band, and you can see that I've got about a 2.3 SWR, and that's about as good as it gets. So if I start tuning around a little bit, you'll see it's going to drop a little bit, but then as I start to go low, below the 2-meter band, it starts to go back up a little bit. And if I tune the opposite direction, you can see the SWR goes up again too. And I haven't really been looking at the other numbers here, but you can see the impedance changes a bit and everything. So this antenna has some adjustments to it, but no matter where I adjust it, it never changes. It stays about the same in the 2-meter portion of the band. It may work a little bit better at 440. I'm not sure. I don't have a 440 radio, nor does this antenna analyzer go up to 440, so I don't know how the antenna performs there. But like I said before, I'm really only interested in 2 meters, so I think it's time to replace it. The new antenna is this Pulse Larsen, and what is the model here? NMOQB, something like that. You can see what's on the sticker there. I got this through HRO, and you know, it was, I don't think it was $18.95. I think it was a little bit less than that. Anyway, you can see it just basically comes with the NMO mount and a whip. That's all there is. Nice and simple, and should be pretty easy to tune. So here's what came in the package. There was the antenna base itself. There is sort of a rubber grommet that this fits into, and another rubber O-ring that must help with the sealing of it. And then the rod itself, the instructions which blew away here just now, and this little Allen wrench, because as everyone knows, nobody owns any Allen wrenches except for the ones that come with all the stuff you buy. Now here's the antenna that I took off the car. I unscrewed this from the magnet mount, and you can see the NMO sort of insert came with it. This should have stayed with the magnet mount, so I'm going to need to get this out from inside this antenna here. It looks like I can maybe get a pair of needle nose on those flats there and maybe spin that. So here's the NMO insert, and this is actually a new one. The one that was inside the other antenna, I couldn't get it out. So I had this other one laying around, so I'm going to use this instead. I'm going to put this on the mag mount. I'll get this nice and tight by hand, and then I'll crank it down a little bit. I'll get some needle nose pliers on these flats, crank that down a little bit more, and then I should be able to install the antenna on top of that. The next thing I'll do is mount the antenna base. Now, according to the instructions over here, you don't want to use both of these. You don't want to use the O-ring and what they're calling the super gasket. You got to use one or the other. So I'm going to try the super gasket and see how that works. It looks like it'll be okay. I don't really need the weather sealing on the mag mount, so that this would probably be sufficient, but I'm going to try this anyway and see how it works. Okay, so I'm just going to thread this down on here. I'm going to put a little force on it to kind of push that gasket down. And now that I've got it sort of tight by hand, I'll use this wrench. And of course I got to hold the mag base from spinning. That feels pretty good. So now I'm going to drop the antenna in, but I'm going to loosen up this set screw first. And now this should drop in. And I'll get that seated. I'm not sure if I'll need to trim it or not. I'll get that good and tight, and now it should be good to go. You can kind of see it there. Now, one thing I don't like about this, as opposed to my other antenna, is it's real flimsy. This is not rigid at all. So we'll see how that performs. It'll tune up better, but maybe when I'm driving it's going to oscillate more and cause more picket fencing. I guess time will tell. So I've got the analyzer back on it, and you can see that the antenna is best right around 130 megahertz or so. It's looking pretty good. So that means I'm going to need to trim it a little bit. As you can see here, I've got a ruler set up against the antenna, and as supplied from the factory, it's 21 inches long. Now that includes the little bit that's down in the base, so the actual exposed area is about 20.5 inches or so. So looking at the chart, we can see here that 130 megahertz is 20.5 inches, which kind of correlates to what the antenna analyzer was telling me. So for the 2 meter band, which is going to be 145 megahertz, or just a little bit more than that really to get the center of the FM band, we want 18 5/8. And of course I want to add about a ½ inch to that to get the total length of the antenna rod. So what I think I'm going to do, just to be a little on the conservative side, just to start off, I'm going to cut this down to 19 inches, and we'll see kind of how that plays. So as you can see, I've cut this down to about 19 1/4 or so. I figured I'd cut it a little long. I can always take some off. I can't add any back to it. So let's put this on and see how it looks. So you can see here, I'm moving in the right direction. Up in the 2 meter band, I'm down to 1.7. But if I tune lower, you can see at 140, I'm at 1.0 SWR. So I'm going to trim a little bit more off the antenna here, and we'll get it where it needs to be. So as you can see here, I've got this thing trimmed down to about 17 3/4 inches. It was a little bit more than I thought I'd need to trim it, but at this length it seems to be right where I want it to be. Here's the whip mounted on the magnet for what should be the last time. I'll show you guys what the analyzer looks like now. So over here at the analyzer, you can see that the antenna is more or less centered right at about 146.52, which is sort of what I was aiming for. If I go up to about 148, which is the top of the band, and there's a couple of repeaters that I use that the transmit frequency for them is in the high 147 range. You can see that the SWR is about 1.2 at the top of the band, and if I go down to the 144.5 range or so, you can see it's about 1.2 down there, and there's 1 or 2 repeaters down there that have a transmit frequency in that range. So I'm pretty much covered throughout the band with a 1.2 or better SWR now, which is a whole lot better than what that other antenna was doing. I think the antenna is much better matched now to the radio, which should keep the radio a little bit happier and a little bit cooler when I'm transmitting with it. So that should do it for the installation of this Larsen antenna. Now that I have an antenna that's matched a little bit better to my radio, Hopefully the radio will run a little bit cooler, I'll get a little bit more power out, and I'll maybe be able to hit those repeaters a little bit better than I had been. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. Thanks for watching.